Hello class. Now I'm working on section 3.2 and we're going to start with something that's a review. Numbers 1 and 2, the directions ask us to find the domain of the rational function. And remember, when we're looking at a rational function, what we're really looking at is what can't be used, which x's can't be used. We know that x can't be 2 because that would cause a 2 in the denominator, and that's not allowed. I'm sorry, a 0 in the denominator, and that's not allowed. So the way we're going to write this is we're going to use set builder notation. Okay, so we make our fancy set brackets, and we say the set of all x's, because those are our input values. That line means such that, remember now the rule comes next, x does not equal 2. It's implied that we're only talking about real numbers here. So that's our domain for number 1. All of the real numbers except 2. Now for number 2, same thing, figure out what would cause a 0 in the bottom. And this time it could be 6 or negative 6 that causes a 0. So the set of all x's such that x cannot equal plus or minus 6. And that's it. The domain are all real numbers except x cannot equal plus or minus 6. Okay, now we're going to look for vertical asymptotes. Now we're going to keep this simple on all of our rational functions. And oh, I guess we didn't keep it that simple. Okay, we're going to attempt to keep it simple in all of our rational functions. And the way you find vertical asymptotes is first you reduce, you simplify the rational expression as much as possible, and then anything that causes a 0 in the denominator is a vertical asymptote. So that means for number 3, that is simplified. That doesn't get any simpler than that. And I see that x is not allowed to be negative 5 because it would cause a 0 in the denominator. And so that tells me that the graph will have a vertical asymptote at x equals negative 5. Okay? Now, number 4 is a little bit more complicated. Number 4 can be simplified a bit, can't it? Okay, so first what we want to do is we want to simplify it, and I can do that by canceling this factor of x. Now be careful, we can cancel the factor of x, we're left with 1 in the top, but you have to make a note. You have to make a note that x is not allowed to be 0, because I've just erased the fact that x equals 0 caused a problem in the original function by canceling it out. So I do that. Now, x equals 0 is not a vertical asymptote. So, what's left? X can't be 1 either. So that is our VA. I'm going to call them VAs from now on. Okay? Number 5. Let's see. Would anything, first of all, can I simplify that at all? No, can't. Second, does anything cause a 0 in the denominator here? No, all real numbers are okay. So we're going to write none. There are no vertical asymptotes. Alright. Now, the rest of the graphs, the rest of this section is all about graphing. And we're going to keep this really simple, okay? I'm going to introduce 2 new basic graphs to you guys. You're going to need a, well, it would be helpful if you had a different color pen. So the first one I'm going to show you is 1 over x. So if we're looking at the graph of f of x, or y, equals 1 over x. Let me make my cool little xy. Okay, there's the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, the first thing is we have these handy little dotted lines. There's a dotted line through here because, as we just learned, x is not allowed to be 0. Okay, that's not in the domain, and this is, you can't get any simpler than 1 over x. This is simplified. Anything that causes a 0 in the denominator after your rational expression's been simplified will give you a vertical asymptote on your graph, and that's what this dotted line is. your graph will never cross it. Okay, it's like a fence basically. Okay, in addition to that, this also has a horizontal dotted line or a horizontal asymptote, and our graphs will not ever cross these. Some do in special cases, but ours won't. Okay, now, those are guidelines basically, and this graph has two pieces or two branches. One of them is up here, and it's going to go like this. And see how as it goes up, it runs along that dotted line. As it comes down and goes to the right, it runs along this dotted line. They're guidelines, they're fences. That's what asymptotes are. Okay, and then I have another piece that's down here. You can verify that these are the pieces by plugging in some numbers. Okay, so here's a couple reference points. This point right here is at -1, -1, right? Because if x is -1, y is -1. This point right up here is at +1, +1, because if x is +1, y is +1. Okay, so that's our first basic graph. We're going to be shifting that around. Our second basic graph is f of x is equal to 1 over x squared. It's similar to the graph that we just saw. Okay, x, y, okay. Dotted lines in the same place, right here. There's my little guidelines. Okay, but this time I have a piece up here. If you really looked closely, it flattens out more quickly. But then the second piece is also up above the x-axis. My reference point on this first piece on the right is +1, +1. My reference point over here is -1, +1, because when x is -1, square it, it's +1, 1 over 1. Y would be +1. Okay, now, all the graphing you're going to do in 3.5 is going to just be shifting those two basic graphs. I want to see the dotted lines and then the two pieces. Not super accurate, just the basic shapes. So first you identify 1 over x is the basic graph we're starting with, and it has been shifted. Now that affects the x value down here, so it's the opposite of what you think it should be. It's shifted right 4 places. Now imagine shifting those red dotted lines. Okay, they're going to shift. That center point that was at 0, 0 will just shift like that. And now, let's see, this is 1 over x, so it's the ones that are kitty corner from each other. One here and one here. And notice it's the red dotted lines that are my guidelines, not the axes. Alright? I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to number 8. Let's see, number 8 is here. Again, I'm looking at 1 over x is my basic graph, and this time it's been shifted right to and up to. So right to and up to. There are my red dotted lines for my guidelines, and I go and I put this piece here and this piece there. Okay, let's do one with x squared, and then that will be all. You guys can finish the rest on your own. Okay, so this time I'm starting with the basic graph of 1 over x squared. Now both the pieces are above the x-axis to start, but those dotted lines are in the same place. Okay, this time it's been shifted left 5. Okay, so that means and up 4. Okay. And there are my guidelines, and I put the first piece in the upper right corner of my little guidelines, and I put the second piece in the upper left corner of my guidelines. And that is the basic shape of the graph on number 11. And that's 3.5.